I have some salt over here. We'll talk about that just now. We've just sung a beautiful song, Is the Beauty of Jesus Seen in You? Is the question that comes out of that song. In Ethiopia, the Governor General wrote a newspaper article, at least he was quoted in a newspaper, as saying the following: "Why can't you send us more Americans like Mr. Downey?" And then, as if to rephrase the question, the Governor General said this: "Why aren't there more human beings like him?" There are many beautiful people in this world, many beautiful Americans even. We can think of a few people that stand out. Every year we talk about them and we lift them up as people who have done things to change humanity for the better. We can also look through the Bible and we can say, look at Moses, look at Enoch, look at Elijah. People that God loved so very, very much. Beautiful people. What we are specifically talking about today is not beautiful people by the world standards like beautiful Americans, but beautiful Christians. And this is an ideal opportunity, having gone through the Beatitudes, to look back on the Beatitudes and to ask ourselves, are we the salt of the earth? Are we the light of the world? Are we by our good works bringing glory to God? And those are the three things we'll look at. First of all, from verse 13, chapter 5, verse 13, we'll look at, are we the salt of the earth? When you think about salt, salt is really good for a lot of things. This salt is good to be thrown down on the ground and so that people can trample on it and they won't slip. But I don't think that's what Jesus was talking about when he talked about the salt from Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. He says emphatically, you are the salt of the earth. If that was all he was going to say, that would be fantastic. But he challenges us a little bit further by saying, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. And we today can see a use for that. But Jesus was actually saying, if you as a Christian lose your saltiness, you're good for nothing. There's nothing good that can come from your life. If you have to think about it, how does salt lose its taste? If you're a scientist, and I had to ask you this question, can pure salt, actually lose its taste? You would say to me, no. Pure salt is hydrochloride. Separately, it's a poisonous thing, but put together, it can be a wonderful thing. It does so many good things, but in its purest form, it cannot lose its taste, except if you would add humidity to it. Or you add this to it, or you add that to it. Maybe Renuka some good curry, may be able to disguise the taste of salt. But actually, salt, the taste is still there. It's so disguised by so many other things that you don't recognize it anymore. And so we see a few benefits here of salt, but as we go through this, I need to just connect you a little bit back to what has just gone on. The Beatitudes have just been, and then we have chapter 5, verses 10, 11, and 12. It's about persecution. The parallel text, Mark chapter 9, verse 49, connects salt to persecution when it says, everyone will be salted with fire. Everyone will be salted with fire. So persecution has a way of making you either stronger as a Christian or weaker as a Christian. You can either come out saying, now that I've been persecuted, I will never go back to the world. Or you can say, when I stand up for who I am as a Christian, people don't like me. They don't want to invite me to their parties. They don't talk around me. I seem to offend them. I seem to make them very uncomfortable. Maybe they feel guilty around me. And so you may say, well, I want to be more like the world. I don't want to be this unique person that Jesus is setting me up to be. But here are the benefits of salt. Salt enhances flavor. If you had to ask Steve and Lloyd, they would tell you they've got a salt block in the backyard. And the deer love to come and lick there because they love the taste, the flavor. It's also a preservative. If you had to ask my brother and I about how to make a whip or how to take a leather skin and make a jacket out of it, we'll tell you, you better stretch it out and put salt on it. If you don't, we were coming back from Rhodesia many years ago. It was probably about 1972. My brother was only 10 years old, I think, or something like that. And we were coming back. We really wanted this whip. And so we talked my dad into letting us buy this whip. And we put it in the back of the car, but they had not salted it correctly. And it stank terribly. There's nothing worse than taking an animal skin that you haven't cured and putting it against your flesh. I mean, you just don't want to do that. There's little worms on it, and it stinks awful. But if you put salt, and then you stretch it out, and then you tan it, and then you eventually, make it really soft by rubbing it together, it's a beautiful thing, and you can use it. So it's a good preservative. It also creates thirst. If you're in the wilderness, you don't know where water is, and you can make a little animal very thirsty, it will run straight to water. It's also a purifying and a cleansing agent. How many of you with flu or sinuses have ever rinsed your mouth with salt and maybe even tried to get it into your sinuses? It purifies and it cleanses. In Numbers chapter 18, verse 19, you can also have a salt covenant. It talks about a covenant of loyalty, as God had a salt covenant later with David so that his kingship lineage will continue throughout the generations. Salt is also used to brighten lamps and enhance ovens. Also in Deuteronomy 29:23, he has a negative thing. If you don't want the land to be used, put salt on it. It will not be able to be used. It will be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Put the Dead Sea there and it will be fine. Mark chapter 9, verse 50, that parallel text, just a few verses on, says that it is also linked to peace. Salt is linked to peace, not just persecution. And so the bottom line with salt is it good for humanity? Are you somebody that's done something in this world that has changed humanity? When your funeral is one day a year in this building or at some nice place like this, would people be able to say about you, the world is at loss because you're no longer here, but the world is better because you're here? Will this building just be filled with Christians, or will there be people from the community that no one here knows, but people who knew that you changed humanity for the better? Will this building be filled with people like that? And that needs to be your goal. And so when you look at salt and you say, how can we be better? Jesus has given us 3 rooms that we can build in this holy temple. And remember, we are talking about the Lord is in His holy temple. January, February, and March, we're talking about purity. Building the temple of God. The Lord is in His holy temple. And we've talked about 3 specific rooms that need to be in this temple. In other words, are you a person that throughout the week will give away mercy? Are you a person who throughout the week will give away peace and purity? Is that something that can be seen in your life, or is that something that cannot be seen in your life? So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we are beautiful Christians. A beautiful Christian is somebody who has salt, a salt person, somebody who makes a tremendous difference in their life. So let's go on to the second thing. If you can say to yourself right now, I am a salt Christian, I make a difference in my world, then, and just let me give you a few other illustrations here. Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa. It's people who, if you mention these names, people will say, in our lifetime, these people have made a difference in their world. Brethren, that's who we need to be. In our world, we need to be making a difference. So let's say that we are a church filled with salty Christians, people who make a big difference in their world. Then the next question we need to ask ourselves is, what do we do to these good Christians? How do we let the world see them? How do we make beautiful Christians visible? That's point number 2. And for that, we need to turn to verses 14 and 15. And he comes right out and he says emphatically again, you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. No debate about it. So you are, right? You are the salt of the earth, and because you're the salt of the earth, the world needs to see this. So how do you make light seen? We are on the summit here. Can a city on a hill be hidden? See, we didn't build a city down there in the valley. Now, Jeff, there's a pretty big valley down there, and we could have built the church down there in the valley, and people coming past the building, they would never have seen us. But because we are a city on a hill, we have said symbolically we would like to be visible. And so we put lights on our sign over there that says Summit Church of Christ. Bill makes sure that this hill is cleaned out, and we're much more visible than what we've ever been. We are looking towards Glenn and saying, Glenn, can you put up a nice new roof? The people will drive. He's even cleaned the steeple. Not just cleaned it. After he cleaned it, and I've got a picture that I'm going to put, that his wife sent me, that we're going to put in the news there, and you'll see that was a pretty hair-raising thing to be way up there. He not only cleaned it, he painted it. And as soon as he painted it, I was coming down from Walmart. I was way up on the ridge. Not even coming down the hill towards Walmart yet, and I saw this bright steeple that I'd never seen before. But it just shines, right? You can see it. You probably noticed it because you painted it. It's right there. We need to be visible. But I assure you, the Lord is not talking about a building. That just reflects who we are. It reflects our desire to be visible. He's talking about each one of us as individuals. We need to shine wherever we are. No matter if you find yourself to be an introvert or somebody who's very, very shy, you need to be showing Jesus. Now, the problem is Matthew 25, verse 5 and onwards, actually, when Jesus says the Pharisees did things to be seen of men. And so many of us say, you know what? I don't want to do things so that people will see what I'm doing. And I agree with that. If you exist in your body, you shouldn't be doing anything because it's hypocritical. But if you don't exist in your body, then you need to be shining. You are the light of the world, right? What does John 8, verse 12 say? Who is the light of the world? Jesus spoke and said, I am the light of the world, right? And if you follow him, the light of Jesus is inside of you, and it shines to everybody. So you and I have a command. And we'll deal with the command just now in verse 16. But right now, I need you to understand you are the light of the world. And you're a city on a hill. And a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people take a lamp and light it and put it under a basket. No, they take it and they put it on a stand so that it will give light to all in that house. Now, the reason the ESV uses the word house in verse 15 is because they had one room. And so you would take this light, it looked like sort of like my hand, and you would have a little bit of oil and this little light on the tip there, and it would feed that, and that light wasn't a very, very strong light, but in pitch darkness, it was very, very, very bright. Now, some of you have had your lights out this past week, and you know what it's like to not have a light. How many of you would have taken the light you had, the flashlight or whatever you were using, and put it in the cellar? Is anybody there who would have done that? You wouldn't do that. Instead, you would put it on a stand. Now, when the Bible says you wouldn't put it under a basket, the word basket is not really used there. It's a unit of measure. This is 3 gallons. The measure of unit is about 2 gallons, and you can maybe see the salt is up to there. So it's about 2 gallons, and you would take a bucket like that, and every household must have had this because it was used to measure 2 gallons of dry wheat. You wouldn't take this type of a bucket and put it over the light, would you? And if it wasn't a very well-made basket, a little bit of light may have shone through it, but Jesus said that's not what you would do. So as a Christian, you wouldn't take salt and let it lose its taste to where the world doesn't know what a Christian is. Nor would you, as a Christian, take the light that is inside of you and put it under a basket. Instead, you will put it up where all in the room, all in the house would see it. And who are we speaking about? In verse 15, it's the very next verse, Keith. I'm sorry I'm not using my clicker. I told Keith I would, but I got distracted. So can you click on, Keith, to the next verse? There we go. That's the one there. You wouldn't take it and put it in, you would put it where everybody can see. Now, this house here, I believe, is the world. So we need to take that light, and we need to let the entire world see where we are and who we are. How can we do that? There are 3 steps. Now, if we click on, you'll see the first one, and the hint is the Beatitudes. If you want the light of Jesus to shine, there needs to be less of you, more of righteousness, and the 3 rooms. And we've talked about that. So you first become poor spirit, then you mourn, then you become meek. Meek says, I'm not gonna rebuild Neville in this body, you see. I'm going to keep Jesus in this body. Now, once I've gotten rid of Neville, once you've gotten rid of self, you become hungry and thirsty for righteousness. You fill yourself with Jesus. Then once you've filled yourself with Jesus, you've got rid of yourself, you're filled with Jesus, now here comes the key. You need to fill yourself with mercy. You need to ask yourself, how can I be a more merciful Christian? This is the salt that we spoke about early on. How can I be a person who's pure? In other words, purity, what sin are you struggling with in your life right now? How can you have victory over that sin? And we'll look at this again in the 3rd point. But then the last one, you see peacemaking. And how can I be more of a peacemaker? And this is something that we are constantly trying to ask ourselves. Currently, our area, northern Kentucky, is about to get a boom like we haven't seen in our lifetime. Amazon Prime is coming here, and they are putting in $1.5 billion. They immediately are going to be creating a whole lot of new jobs. And this is just what they're putting into CVG, into the airport. They want to make this an airport hub. Right now, we are the 8th largest airport hub in America. We will go down to the 3rd largest hub in America. Not only that, but we will have a world presence. The whole world will know about Cincinnati. And you know where that growth is taking place? Northern Kentucky. So right now, the 2nd largest airport hub, transportation hub in the world is Memphis. That is the second. That's our first. Our second is Louisville. It's 7th in the world. And Anchorage, Alaska, in America is the 3rd biggest. It is currently the 9th biggest. We will be the 9th biggest transportation hub in the world. So Cincinnati, more northern Kentucky, is about to explode in growth. There's not enough workers for this area. So we're going to have workers coming in, pouring into our area. I know Cincinnati and northern Kentucky is going to shine throughout the world. I know it's going to grow, but here's the question. Will the church grow? Throughout the last 30, 40 years, we've seen the world's population grow and we've seen the church's population diminish. And it has to stop. And there's only one way it can stop, a very, very simple way. Be the salt of the earth, be the light of the world. So let's go to the application. What's going to happen if we are the salt, and what's going to happen if we are the light of the world? He says this, in the same way, the others were stated emphatic, this is stated as a command. In the same way, let your light shine before others. Let your light shine before others. Not asking you to do it, not asking if you're introvert or extrovert, not asking you if you're a good Christian or a bad Christian, just stating a fact. You have Christ in you. You mustn't shine, but Christ in you must shine. How many people know that you are at the Summit Church of Christ this morning? What would have been the easiest way for you to have told the world that you were sitting here? Anybody have Facebook on their phones? Anybody click location? It's real simple, right? How long does it take you to do that? Just seconds. And you say, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be this holy person who gets seen, you know. This is not about you. This is about Christ in you. You must shine. People must know about you. They must know who you are. But more see it in you than hear it from you. They must understand just this person is a Christian. And they must have no doubt. They mustn't come to you with suggestions of bad things. I remember many years ago, I was in a conversation. Guin and I were sitting there. And I thought I heard something that I wasn't sure if I heard. And I need to let people know that I'm a Christian a little bit more than this. So let the light of Christ, let your light shine before others. Well, how are you going to do that? So that your what? Your good works. You see that? So that your good works may be seen. They need to see your good works. So this is not a suggestion anymore. This is a command, and it's specifically telling you what you should do by way of command. And then it tells you why. So that your Father in heaven may get the glory. So that the glory may belong to your Father in heaven. He's going to be glorified. So when they say to you, I'm so thankful that you are helping people, that you're feeding these people once a month. I see you here, and you're just doing all of this. You say, to God be the glory. I'm not doing this. You ask me, I'm not going to be there. But you ask Christ in me, there's nowhere else He wants to be. So we look at these three, and I've got three very practical questions to ask you that's going to leave you a little bit uncomfortable if you don't do them. Number one, this week, I will be a good Samaritan to who? Now, just process that, because you're going to start arguing with me in your heads. This week, I'm going to be a good Samaritan to who? I want you to fill in something there. What you're going to say to me is, well, I can't do that because these things just happen. I'm just walking along, and then I see somebody who has a need, and then I take care of that person's need, right? That's what you're saying in your head, right? But let me argue with you a little bit. The Good Samaritan, did he have enough money in his pockets to take care of that person that he found there in the ditch? Was he ready? Was he prepared? See, he was ready. He was prepared. Now, Ben, you have a whole bunch of gift bags there for homeless people, right? You still have them? They're still back there on the coat rack, right? A whole big box? So if you were going to be a good Samaritan, if you were determined this week to be a good Samaritan, what is wrong with going to Ben and saying, Ben, yes, $5 so you can replace that bag. Could you give me one of these bags so that if I come across somebody who has a need, you're ready. You need to prepare. I don't mind how you do it. If you do it that way, if you do it another way, you and I need to be prepared. You need to know right now in your mind, more or less, what you're going to do. Now, maybe, Brad, you're driving down the road and somebody's got a flat tire, and you didn't know that. You couldn't prepare for that. So what does a good Samaritan do? Well, if you don't have your family with you, right, because you've got to be responsible for your family first. And if it looks safe because they need you as a breadwinner, right? And then you can stop, right? So there's a few things. You don't just go crazy in this. And there are things that you can do that's really ridiculous. This can be a very dangerous area. But you can be a good Samaritan. Question number two. My plan to be victorious over sin this week is what? What are you struggling with? If you are struggling with heroin, you will still every day, you will drive by, or maybe once a week, you'll drive by the place where you used to go whenever you used to struggle with heroin. I won't say what you did specifically, but it's very bad. And you're going to miss it very, very much. But you're going to keep driving by. You're not going to stop. Why? Because you love your current life, you like your car, you like your house, you like your spouse maybe, you like your children if you have children. You love Jesus, and you never want to lose. Whatever you're struggling with, take it one moment at a time. Take it one day at a time, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time. But determine right now, I'm going to have victory. And how are you going to have victory? Well, I'm going to drive by, or I'm going to move to a different location, or I'm going to change my route so that I don't have to buy, or I'm going to get rid of whatever is causing me to sin. I am going to have victory. I'm going to make being pure in heart, for they shall see God, my number one priority in life. And the last question, again, leaning on the Beatitudes, this week I will help so and so to create peace. How do we do this? Do you ever gossip? Does anybody ever come to you and gossip? Whenever somebody's gossiping to you, or you're gossiping, or you're speaking with somebody else in a negative way and that person's not in the room, you are bringing an accusation in that person's life. You're creating ripples that's going to extend throughout eternity. You can be a peacemaker just by refraining from gossiping. You can be a peacemaker just by stopping people from gossiping to you. But if somebody does say something negative to you, you are being given a persecution gift. You've been given the ability to do something very uncomfortable. You can bring these two people together. And we all have minds, we all have brains, we know how to do this. You see, it's not who you are helping to be at peace, it's what are you doing to create animosity in this world. And so Jesus is asking us, are we the salt of the earth? Jesus is asking us, are we the light of the world? And if so, Jesus is up there, right? He's with the Father in heaven. And he has light that's coming down from heaven, and it's coming through whose heart? Is it coming through your heart? If it's coming through your heart, what must it do? It must exit your heart into the world. This is how we as a church will grow. This is how we as a church must grow. I'm so excited for the growth we have had of recent times, and I'm pretty sure that a large part of that growth is because there was salt in this building and because the light was going out from this building. And I would like to see so much more of that growth. If I had to ask the elders right now, what would we look like if we only grew from other congregations in the area? Would that be good? But how wonderful is it to see souls being added because of salt and light? And I need to really applaud so many of you here today. There's so many of you who are doing great things in our community. Some of you are doing it on an academic level. Some of you are doing it on a sports level. There's a few teams going out right now from this congregation, represent from this congregation, that are still doing wonderful things. But we need to do more with Jesus in our life. Do people know about the humanity? Do they know how you're changing the world because of Jesus? And folks, never say, I don't want to let the world know because I don't want to be like a hypocrite Pharisee. That's just the devil speaking. That's false humility. The world needs to know what we're doing. You know, we communicate nowadays through light. We communicated visually this morning through light. We communicate our telephones, our computers, all of that goes via fiber optic. And fiber optic is a very, very thin strand, like a hair. It's so small. It's so much smaller than you and I communicating the gospel, which is so much more powerful. Bell Laboratories said that this is the speed that they can communicate with. Speeds of over, and I don't know what this word means, but it sounds very impressive. Ben, maybe you know what this means. Speed of light through fiber optic goes at over 100 petabit. Ben doesn't even know what that is. Over 100 petabit times a kilometer, right? That is huge. That is incredibly fast. And that is what Jesus knew from the very beginning we would need to be. We need to be the salt of the world. We need to be the light. With the salt of the earth, we need to be the light of the world. And so he's given us this command, let your light so shine before men that they may see your works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. That is the challenge this morning. If you are here this morning as a Christian and you feel like you don't have that light and you're not that salt, you kind of wishy-washy, you watered down, you're lukewarm, you're not hot or cold for Jesus, then you need to re-salt yourself. And so the question is, how can salt after it's lost its taste be restored? The answer is, in our case, you come forward and you ask for the prayers of the church. Or if you don't need to do that, if that's just between you and God, then you confess to God and you say, God, I want to be the salt of the world. I want to make it my ambition that when I die, there will be a whole lot of people that can say, this world is poorer because so-and-so is not here, but it's richer because so-and-so used to be here. And this building can be filled with people whose lives you impacted. Brethren, think about that. It's not very difficult to do. You can do this. You really can. We can be the salt of our community. Our young kids are leading us in sports and academics, showing us how to do this. But in our faith, we can do this. And we need to be the light. If you're not the light like you need to be, you can also come forward to ask the prayers of the church. If you haven't started this journey, then you haven't been introduced to salt yet. The way you are introduced to salt is you die to yourself. You're buried with Jesus, you die with Jesus, you're buried in this baptistry with Jesus, and you resurrect to walk in a new life, and sin no longer has control over you. That means you will still be tempted, and you can still sin, but you're not a puppet in the hands of sin. And so if you want to do that journey, if you need to come forward for the prayers of the church, or you want to start your journey in Christ, please come forward right now as together we stand and sing.